In the summer of 1969, over 600 million people huddled in dark living rooms, staring at grainy television sets. They were watching a fragile aluminum box fall toward the desolate surface of the moon. To understand why half the planet held its breath, we have to look back to the late 1950s. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in the Cold War, a standoff measured in ideologies, global influence, and technological muscle, and the United States was actively losing. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik. It was the world's first artificial satellite, a small silver sphere orbiting overhead. For the American public, the math was terrifyingly simple. If the Soviets possessed the rocket power to put a satellite into space, they had the power to put a nuclear weapon into orbit. 4 years later, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human being to journey into the blackness of space. The technological gap was widening. The Apollo program was a multi-billion-dollar exercise in geopolitical dominance. It provided the United States with a monumental public stage to prove their technology could outperform the Soviet Union. That mandate came in 1962, when President John F. Kennedy stood before a crowd and declared the United States would land a man on the moon before the decade was out. It was a wildly audacious goal. At the time of Kennedy's speech, NASA barely knew how to safely put an astronaut into low Earth orbit. They now had less than 8 years to figure out how to send a crew 240,000 miles through a lethal vacuum, land them softly, and bring them home. Compressing decades of necessary engineering into a few short years carried a horrific cost. In 1967, a fire broke out during a routine pre-flight test for Apollo 1, claiming the lives of Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. The men tapped for the Apollo 11 mission, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, knew exactly what they were stepping into. The government, too, was bracing for the worst. The probability of a fatal failure was so high that President Richard Nixon's speechwriter drafted a television address titled, "In Event of Moon Disaster," prepared for the highly likely scenario that Armstrong and Aldrin would be stranded on the lunar surface to die. The entire Apollo program was an extremely lethal experiment. Human lives were strapped to experimental rockets as bargaining chips in an ideological standoff. On July 16, 1969, the crew climbed atop the Saturn V. Standing 363 feet tall and loaded with highly explosive rocket fuel, it remains the most powerful operational rocket ever built. It roared to life, shaking the Florida coast as it pushed them into the sky. The massive machine did its job perfectly. After a 3-day coast through the utter silence of space, Apollo 11 successfully entered lunar orbit. Here, the crew split up. Michael Collins stayed behind to pilot the command module, while Armstrong and Aldrin crawled into a tiny aluminum-skinned spacecraft named the Eagle and began their descent. Every earthly safety net was gone. There were no rescue ships. Their survival now relied entirely on early, unproven computer systems and their own ability to stay calm under intense pressure. Almost immediately, the descent started to unravel. As they fell toward the lunar surface, a yellow light illuminated on the console, a 12:02 program alarm. Back in Houston, flight controllers stared at their monitors. The Eagle's targeting computer was overloading, struggling to process all the incoming radar data. Aborting the mission was a highly distinct possibility, but a 26-year-old guidance officer named Steve Bales quickly analyzed the error. He realized the computer was automatically prioritizing crucial landing tasks and dropping everything else. He told the crew to ignore the alarm and keep flying. But the overloaded computer had made an error. Armstrong looked out his triangular window and saw they were not heading for a smooth plane. The system was flying them directly into a massive crater filled with car-sized boulders. Touching down there meant tipping over and dying. Armstrong grabbed the manual controls. He pitched the Eagle horizontally, skimming over the lunar surface, desperately burning fuel to find a flat patch of ground. Inside Mission Control, the room went dead silent. The capsule communicator called out 60 seconds of fuel remaining, then 30 seconds. Outside the Eagle, the descent engine violently kicked up a massive cloud of gray dust, completely blinding Armstrong. With mere seconds of fuel left, a crackly transmission broke the silence. "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." When the multi-million-dollar technology choked, human intuition and nerve successfully closed the final 50 feet. A few hours later, a grainy black and white feed was broadcast to the world. Neil Armstrong slowly backed his way down a 9-rung ladder, placed his left boot into the soft powder of the moon, and noted that one small step for a man was a giant leap for mankind. Buzz Aldrin followed him out. For 2.5 hours, they bounced around in a low-gravity environment that Aldrin aptly described as magnificent desolation. Before they left, they attached a small stainless steel plaque to the leg of the lunar module. It read, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon. We came in peace for all mankind." A mission built to assert power in a deeply divided world resulted in 600 million people watching the same screen, sharing a brief moment of borderless human unity. Getting home required firing a single ascent engine. There was no backup. If it failed to ignite, they would stay there forever. But it fired perfectly, pushing them up to reunite with Collins and eventually splashing down safely in the Pacific Ocean. Apollo 11 forced incredible advancements in computing, materials, and engineering that still heavily shape our modern infrastructure. Looking back from the lunar surface, the astronauts saw a small, glowing blue marble suspended in a void. Every political border and national rivalry vanished, replaced by the view of a single, fragile home shared by all of humanity. Apollo 11 proved that humanity has the capacity to survive and work on other worlds. So, with all the new advancements in space travel happening today, do you think we will see humans walk on Mars in our lifetime? Let me know in the comments. Stay curious.